This is a twisted web.
This Thanksgiving,
Tell me everything.
gather the whole family for a killer good time.
What's that supposed to mean?
It's one of the year's absolute best films.
You guys fans?
Oh, yes.
Knives Out, rated PG-13.
Knives Out was directed by Rian Johnson and stars Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Christopher Plummer, and many other A-list actors in a modern whodunit. When a crime novelist dies after his 85th birthday, a private detective arrives at his estate to investigate. He soon sifts through a web of red herrings and self-serving lies to uncover the truth behind the writer's demise. Welcome to Caps 13 Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Nate Vanderpool, and alongside me is my co-host, Bailey Nolan. So, me and Bailey had the chance to see two movies this last weekend, and we saw Knives Out. Bailey, what'd you think of Knives Out?
Knives Out was actually very good. I got to see it in theaters on Thanksgiving night, which was actually a really cool experience. It was, one of those classic murder mystery movies, and I haven't seen many of those.
No,
but
because they don't make anymore.
No, they don't.
It feels like. Yeah.
But it's a great comeback with that, and I think it was a really, really good movie.
Yeah, Rian Johnson really directed the heck out of this movie, honestly. Like, I could see this being a modern classic murder mystery.
This movie had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It had me thinking about what was happening, what was going to happen next, and trying to think of all the stuff that happened prior in the movie.
It kept you guessing.
It kept me guessing, and some things I was right, but most things I was wrong, and I think that's a thing that everyone will experience if they go watch this movie.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed this movie, but I had one certain flaw, and the only flaw that I really had with it was I felt like the director of this movie, Rian Johnson, maybe thought that it was a little more clever than what he thought.
Yeah.
It was a very clever movie, but where there were a few twists and turns where I was just like, all right, did you really need to have that? Like,
yeah.
It kind of just seemed like it was just there just to, have even more surprise.
Yeah.
There really didn't need, really didn't need to be anymore.
Going off of that, there were some parts in the movie that were kind of cheesy. I wouldn't say cheesy, but
it was good cheese.
It was good cheesy. Like there's some, I'm not gonna spoil it, but there's a part in the movie where they go somewhere, and you're just like, why are you there? Why are you doing this? And then they kind of get into this whole situation. It's like, well, you could have avoided that if you're realistically not in this situation. But it adds to the value of the movie. I can see how it goes. But it makes no sense if you haven't seen that. So go ahead and go see this movie.
Yeah. So with Knives Out, what would you rate this movie out of 10?
I'd give this about an 8.3, 8.4.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff to take into account with this movie. I mean, the story behind it, there's so many things you have to connect the dots with when you're creating this, and to keep all the continuity in check and everything. It's just...
Yeah, I give it about probably a solid 8.0. Like, this is a fun, exciting movie that I feel like everybody should see in the theaters. It's a good time, but I think it has its flaws. But for a murder mystery and whodunit, this is, like I said, it probably will be a modern classic, and people will revisit this movie from years to come.
Yep.
Only 3 people in the world have one of these, and only one of them is Irish. Do you know how strong I made you?
The Irishman was directed by Martin Scorsese and stars Hollywood icons Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino, and is the story about a hitman who recalls his life in the mob and the possible involvement with the murder of Jimmy Hoffa. Other than Knives Out, me and Bailey also had the opportunity to see Martin Scorsese's new film, The Irishman, which is now available on Netflix. So, Bailey, what did you think of this movie?
The Irishman, I was actually blown away. I mean, of course, it's going to be a great movie. It's a Scorsese film. It's another timepiece. Yeah. It's another mob movie, which he is excellent.
It's return to form, honestly. Like this, I mean, I know you haven't seen the movie Goodfellas, which you got to see it. It's a classic, but this is basically how I would describe the anti-Goodfellas. Goodfellas is really a movie about, the exotic life of a gangster and just the mob and all that. But The Irishman, this is a very bleak movie. And we follow Robert De Niro's character, Frank Sheeran, throughout this entire film, from World War II up until, the 60s and 70s. But Martin Scorsese, amazing in this movie. Every actor in this movie is amazing. Honestly, I think that they should all be nominated for Oscars.
This just shows how legendary these people are on screen. The chemistry between each one of these characters, when either 2 of them are on screen, 3 of them are on screen, or just one of them, it is just it keeps you locked in, and it reminds you of the times back in the 60s and 70s and 80s when they used to team up and make these movies. It was just it hasn't skipped a beat.
Yeah. I think this might be in my top 5 of Martin Scorsese films. I don't know. I just love this movie. Honestly, I can't even think of one particular flaw besides the runtime.
Yes.
The
definitely.
Runtime, a 3.5-hour movie. That's long. That's asking a lot for anybody to sit down and have your full attention, onto the film.
Yeah.
But I think this is a movie that everybody should see. This is just a fantastic movie. Like, and the final shot, actually, I would say this, the final hour of the movie is gripping. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. It's all due to the story, the direction, and the performances by the actors.
I think with this one, it's with a lot of Scorsese films, it's more focused on the story. This one is more of a chamber piece. Yeah. It's about a true story. Yeah. And I think you have to take a lot into account when you're doing something like that. And I think that for Scorsese to do something like this and knock it out of the park the way he did, it just shows how great he is and you know how involved he is with this kind of storytelling.
What would you give this movie out of 10?
That's a tough one. Probably give it about a 8.7.
Really? Oh, okay, yeah, we are.
Just talking about, runtime and.
Okay, I totally see where you're coming from then, but for me, this is a 9.5. Like, I
Really?
think that this is a Best Picture nominee for me personally. I think it'll get nominated for the Oscar for sure. It's a great movie though, and it's available on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, there's no
Which
reason,
everybody does.
Yeah, there's no reason you shouldn't be watching this movie. But that takes up our time here at Caps 13 Movie Reviews. Be sure to tune in on our next episode, and me and Bailey break down our top 5 films of 2019. Libby with weather after this.